We humans worry. One might ask how we could help not doing so with the many things bothering us, whether problems with our relationships or with our workplace or with money and so on. Suzuki Roshi said that we will have problems every day, implying that problems in themselves are not the problem. It is our worrying about them that is. We naturally use our thinking to take care of ordinary things in our life, but we also tend to fruitlessly think about things. Often thoughts come to mind that we don't know what to do with. While thinking is here to help us, it ends up hurting us as well, much like an autoimmune diseases do. Our inability to stop this kind of thinking from causing us trouble makes us wish sometimes that we could get out of our head. Why we somehow cannot is because our worries are tied to our having a sense of self. Newborns don't seem to need to have a sense of self. Mothers do everything for babies and come to their aid when they cry to express some lack that they feel. Even when infants show that they don't want to eat by playing with their food or spilling it, no particular sense of self seems involved. However, in the time called the terrible twos, when infants start acting aware of being themselves, me gets heard a lot from them. This is especially so when they are vocalizing what they want or don't want. I could also say me is an important word there too. The original Jewish tale of the first humans provides an useful metaphor for understanding where our sense of self comes from. We are told that while Adam lived peacefully in Eden, God had stipulated that Adam must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, lest he then be doomed to die. To keep Adam company, God also made Eve. And being more curious than Adam, she picked a piece of the fruit, most likely a fig and not an apple, since the Near East doesn't have apples, and she offered Adam a bite. His accepting it led to their being exiled from Eden, and thus began the fall of human beings from what Catholics call grace, or no more than Catholics, grace. We see the pair in medieval art with their privates covered by fig leaves. Patriarchal thinking aside, there seems to be no good reason why Adam should be created before Eve, though surely it was a man who came up with the story. God's being said to have made Eve out of one of Adam's ribs is equally suspect, even if it was said to explain why women have one more rib than men. A Christian theologian much later termed what Adam and Eve had done committing original sin. As a Catholic adolescent, I had problems with the idea of sin. And many years later, in talking with the Benedictine monk, Brother David Steindl-Rast, when we were both at Tassajara back in the 60s, I brought up sin as the reason why I stopped going to church. He replied that sin is just separation from God. It could also be reasoned that God wasn't trying to keep the powers of thinking to himself, but was rather hoping to keep Adam and Eve from being subject to the troubles that thinking would create. What Zen Buddhists might make of their story, as well as his subsequent explanation as the origin of sin, is that both of these portray our separation for us, not from a deity, but from our Buddha nature. This is separating ourselves from ourselves, and is the opposite of what Dogen termed, as you know, all of you, settling the self on the self. The second self being our true nature that we are not aware of having due to thinking, hiding it from us. In other terms, the understanding that original sin is what prevents Adam and Eve from being with God is for us I'm sorry, I have a note here. I can't read my own English. Oh, yes, okay. Is from us, represents our small self, keeping us from experiential knowledge of our big self. What is behind this discriminating is our ego-driven delusions, functioning to cause us to worry about not getting what we like or getting what we dislike. Even if later in our practice, we aren't taken in by these choices that we had to make, we still continue to worry about ourselves. When getting old, for instance, mere signs of a common illness can make us erroneously think that something more serious might be going on with us. Our having such concerns about the self makes it unlikely that we can keep thoughts about our small self from causing us to worry. True freedom only comes from fully forgetting this self. We will still be taking care of our ordinary things in our life, but with problems no longer being problems, but merely being things to do in response to what we find ourselves facing. It doesn't make any sense then either to worry about what has been or what will be, for we will easily deal with whatever there is that as it comes up. We certainly won't have any fear of death without a sense of self. With no need to protect ourselves against something that is non-existent, we won't think that we are doomed to die like Adam and Eve were said to be. The Welsh poet Dylan Thomas wrote, if for another reason, death will have no dominion. Death will have no dominion. Being in the present without worries about the past or the future is all there is, actually. What is here, period. Thank you. Here comes Jane. Yeah. Okay. And does anybody have any comments or questions or additions to make for us? We need the pump to be primed.
Death shall have no dominion?
Yes.
Can you go into that a little bit more?
No, I just like the quote. Yes. Anyway,
Shall I answer?
Jane will do it in a second here, but let me go first.
Yes.
This is the explanation that people give. When you're having a thought, it's not my reasoning, but usual Buddhist reasoning. When you have a thought, where does the thought come from? We have no idea where the thought comes from. Your thought is just there. Okay? And therefore in Zen, we call, or not Zen only, but in Mahayana Buddhism, we call this no birth. our thought, no thought is born. And our life is actually made up of how we perceive with our five senses and make them into thoughts. And if there's no birth, there is also no death. It's the same meaning that I was said when I said there is no past or no future. You know, whatever has been or whatever will be, there is no starting of whatever there has been. Now, of course, we are born as humans, but we're talking about the nature of the human mind. So, of course, we're born. And I talked about being born with mother before. But therefore, death, you know, is just doesn't bind us. You don't fear death. For one thing, you don't go anywhere, because who are you? You are your Buddha nature. Another explanation is that from using from Dogen, that you know, we don't say that, you know, beginning to die. You know, death. They are two completely different things, life and death. There's life, and life goes on, life. No matter how we feel, it's life. And then it's gone. There's no life left, and that's death. But until that minute, there's nothing to fear. You're still living. So therefore, death will have no dominion.
So you're saying that we probably will have some sort of surprising emotion, probably fear, when we know we're close to the end. Some people do have that.
Well, of course, people do have it, but if you're realized in the practice, you probably don't. I say probably. I think you don't, but I don't know exactly everybody. You know, the Dalai Lama. I listened to a tape of his once about. He talked about how about death for Tibetan Buddhists or Buddhists. But he's Tibetan Buddhist, and he practices dying every day. They go through 8 stages. Well, of course, this says that there is death because, you know, because in their case, even though your heart stops, they say you shouldn't bury a sage because something goes on even though the heart has stopped. And they practice what's going on in their religion. There are various stages that you go through during early death. So they just face it every day.
That's true. I do know about that. What I think I was after is that we worry about a lot of things,
Yeah?
but we don't want to worry about death.
No, all worries, that's right. No, well,
Putting off worrying about it.
worries disappear.
They do. The great one worry, I think most of us have, is death.
Okay.
And I think we split it up into all kinds of little things that keep us busy, so we don't think about that, we don't remember that, because time seems to move so quickly. Wow, it's not Easter yet, but before you know it, you're at Easter this year. So knowing you're going to die, it eventually is there.
Oh yes, it certainly is there, and certainly we will experience that. I had one more thought here, but just left my mind on me, unfortunately. Let me see if it comes back if I go for a while.
Jane wanted to say something.
Oh, Jane, yeah, Jane.
I was
thank you,
thinking
thank you.
about it. I'm not sure I can now, but I think Peter mostly said it, all of it.
But go ahead anyway.
I was just thinking that the self is the main
Oh, that's what I want to talk about.
worrier And without, if you step away from yourself and do other work, without involving yourself in indulgence of the thought of self, then the idea of dying disappears from you as well. But just trying to wrap your mind around what it means not to be, it seems like a totally impossible act anyway. But I think we can imagine the future a lot, and we project our ideas about what we can do in the future, but we can't do that with dying. We have no idea. So we're left with nothing but imagination, and that turns itself into worry. But I think if we just paid attention more to what we were doing every moment, we would probably worry less about ourselves and more about keeping the road clean up until we die.
Now I remember what I wanted to say. Jane said it before me, or before it left me, is that the whole point is forgetting the self. And the self is this small self, not the totality of who each person is. And if you don't care about the self in that way, this is the point of what I was trying to say. There's no reason, fear won't be there, worry won't be there. The self and worry are very, very connected. But the whole point of Buddhism is to realize, ultimately, that small self, of course, obviously, is there. But when you're no longer under its control, as it were, when you're no longer deluded by it, everything changes. And one of the changes is death doesn't matter.
I think if you do find that, when you look and you release enough things, you find that, then I think all the other little things drop off as well.
They sure do. That's right. They're all go together. Yeah, and they drop off slowly, but you see them dropping off.
And then we open up the eternal now to step into.
Yeah.
And then we aren't worried so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also a very good point.
But you could worry that you're not stepping into the eternal now if you really wanted to worry. So that might be the best thing to worry about.
You probably can't step into it, by the way. It's just there.
It's true.
But it's but that's just I'm just teasing you here. That's all. Well, I was hoping other hands would show up, but they don't seem to have. Oh yeah, there. Sandy.
You hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. This past week, I had to put Winston to sleep.
Oh.
Yeah, and the decision to do it was both made by myself and my husband, and because he had collapsed and couldn't walk and was dragging himself, and there was no life that was enjoyable left for him. And so, but I realized that the discomfort, the pain that my husband and I were going through losing him was purely selfish. And like you said, it was, I'm losing something. I'm losing my beloved pet. But I had to step back and really look at that, because I had to let go of him and to carry on without being able to know. I know in the future I won't be able to have another pet because we're just getting a little too old and having trouble walking, and doesn't allow me to take an animal out for a walk. So I really had to step back and let go of my my selfish thoughts. What am I going to do without him? Those types of thoughts. And it made it more, how do I say it? It made it more acceptable because I had to look at it from his point of view. He was suffering. He was not running around happy anymore, enjoying his life. So I had to step back and really look at that. And I was able to let go a lot of my anguish because I knew that what we were doing was for him, not for us. And so you need to move him on the list.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, Sandy, that's a very good example. Yeah,
Yeah. Thank
I'm
you.
sorry about that. But however, Jane and I recommend getting a cat. You don't have to avoid a cat.
I know. Howard's not a cat person. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's just, it'll get to the point where he can't drive. So wouldn't be able to take him to the vet. I would have to rely on all
okay.
other people. So, like as you said, life goes on and we're alive now. And that's something to celebrate and to be happy about, no matter what it throws
Thank you.
us.
Yeah, thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we will go ahead and we will do service.